Welcome to another episode of Delay the Decay. Today my guest is Jack Kim. Jack is founder and CEO of Core Investments, a Denver-based commercial real estate firm that he launched in 2003. Over more than 25 years, Jack has helped acquire, operate, and improve roughly 2 million square feet of commercial property while managing approximately $200 million in investor equity. But what makes Jack especially compelling is the way he connects business excellence with kingdom purpose, stewardship, generosity, and human flourishing. I recently heard Jack speak at an event, and before he was finished, I knew I needed to have him on the Delay the Decay podcast. Jack and his wife, Dr. Jeannie Kim, are the parents of 4 sons, age 22 down to age 11. Jack, welcome to the podcast, my friend.
Thank you, Dan. Love being here. Love the conversation.
Thank you. This is going to be a lot of fun. And before we start getting into your story and the way that you live and lead and love, I want to ask you, what's one habit or discipline that you've been working to incorporate into your life recently to keep you moving up and to the right?
I think a pretty simplistic one, perhaps, is when I come in the morning in my office here. The first thing I do, that's the only time I really close the door, and the first thing I do is I kneel at my chair and I surrender my chair, really the chair, the decision-making chair of my life. And that goes for my overall life, my family, my work, my ministry. I have to surrender, every day, because there's just a natural tendency for us as human beings to take over. And take over the controls and be the source. So the surrender prayer, if I don't do it every day, I take it back. So it's a must.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for that. Yeah, you started your career out many years ago, and when you entered the marketplace, what is it that you were pursuing? Were you in the same place then as you are now, kneeling at your chair? Submitting all things to your Creator?
In some ways, Dan, I did, but not in all ways for sure, and still, a work in progress, right? Aren't we all? But I would say that when I started this business, I was in my late 30s, and I was transitioning from a corporate environment, which I enjoyed, and I felt like things were going well, but Deep down, I knew that there was just something in me that was more entrepreneurial. I needed more of my creative juices to flow. And so that's how I started this company and this business in real estate. It's really an entrepreneurial endeavor. But, from my early childhood, I knew that there's a calling on our lives, that this is temporary. And there were times when I thought for sure I was going to seminary. My brother went to seminary. He's a vocational pastor. But regardless, I knew that I'd be a minister. I knew that that's our calling. Matthew 28, to go make disciples, the universal priesthood calling. And that's why the company was called Kingdom Oriented Real Estate, and still is. We go by Core, K-O-R-E. It is really to make sure I acknowledge my role as a steward, not an owner. There's only one owner, and that's what I tell the staff in the company as well. There's one owner, and it's not me.
Was there a time, even having faith as a young man, was there a time where you had that aha moment that I don't own this? I am a steward, not just your business, but your relationships, your family, your health. When did that stewardship type of thinking and mentality take hold? Was there an event?
Yeah, I don't know if there was one event, but you know what? To me, like, the ongoing theme in my life is the struggles, the trials. It's what forms you, and it's what makes you dependent. And John 15:5, to when Jesus tells us, I am the vine and you are the branches, and to stay as a branch and to stay on the vine, I think we learn that through the struggles, the trials, and I think it's if you call that an aha moment, it's not so much a moment but a journey, that if I'm going to be the source, things aren't going to go very well. Yeah. So I think that's kind of been a theme in my life.
Jack, one of the characteristics, one of your characteristics that impressed me and encouraged me and prompted me to invite you as a guest is certainly your accomplishments, certainly your man of faith, but your humility, honestly, that you acknowledge that, like all of us, we are men in process, and none of us have arrived. And you're very willing to talk about your mistakes, and I don't find that very often, quite frankly, in men or women that are at the top of the food chain in their business. So thanks for modeling that.
I'm glad you see it that way. I hope I didn't pull the wool over your eyes because you see me every day. You might have a different opinion on some days.
You see, that's what I'm talking about.
You know, it's interesting. I was driving my wife to the airport this morning because she's going to a conference in Austin, and we were talking about that, how the kingdom economy is different. It's backwards from the world, right? Like maybe we're backwards. So my wife was just reminding me in this, philosophical conversation that the first will be last and the last will be first. And I think it's infiltrated the church too. Like it's about secular accomplishments, secular status. Last night I had a business meeting as a dinner meeting, and I was talking about kind of the faith forward culture of our company, and it really is a struggle, is a tension, right? Because you look all around, and this world is really captivating. It's like, one of my sayings is life is short and eternity is not. But we put all our eggs in this temporary basket sometimes, oftentimes. And we get so mesmerized and so focused on the temporary. And this isn't going to last. So what is really permanent? What is really eternal? That's where our eggs need to be shifting over to, is that basket.
Yeah. I think it was Randy Alcorn, probably many other people as well, but he's the one that I remember just saying that this life is a dot on the line of eternity.
Yes.
And oftentimes we live as if it's the whole enchilada, but it's just a dot. So you've core kingdom-oriented real estate. You have core values, and the foundational core value, the one that all the others sit on, is excellence. Is that correct?
That's our first value out of the 5. Yeah.
Yeah. You spoke in our earlier conversation about, is it Kaizen?
Oh yeah, I was telling you about like my first corporate job at Fidelity Investments, and that's the first job I was able to get. And I remember they kept using that term, and it just meant to keep improving, constant improvement, I guess.
And that's stuck with you, hasn't it?
Maybe not so much in an aspirational way, but I think it resonated with me. There's a desire in us to constantly improve, get better. It's kind of that, along with striving and ambition, is to keep trying to improve and hit the next level, whatever that may be.
And I believe that's stewardship as well, because God has made us a certain way and given us a certain wiring. And if we don't strive for excellence or to improve in what God has already given us, we're really not stewarding our gifts well, are we?
Yeah, God is a God of excellence, right? Like sometimes I feel like the culture of the body of believers is excellence sometimes connotes like a secular endeavor rather than sacred. And to me, it's sacred too. Like God is excellent, and He wired us to be excellent. He wired us to do things with excellence. So, we're talking about the vocational context, right? Like what we do for a living. And that is also our ministry. Like we're supposed to show up a certain way. We're supposed to pursue excellence. And to be mediocre doesn't sound like being a great witness.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Somebody once said that, even from our salvation, our standing in God's kingdom, that the gospel is against earning, but it's not against working. That we work out our salvation, and we will till the day we're face to face with Jesus, but we don't earn any of it. Jesus earned that for us.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a good word. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Pursuing excellence. How do you pursue excellence and encourage your team to pursue excellence, your four sons to pursue excellence without getting caught up in the trap of false identities, perfectionism, achievement, status? I mean, all those might come, but how do you do that yourself, and how do you coach others to do that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to being a steward and working for somebody, right? Praying out at my chair. If it's all about me and if it's all for me, yeah, you could work really hard because you're very ambitious and you want to accomplish things. But things just, I noticed, fall out of balance. Like the world's out of balance when that happens, right? And um, it's kind of hard to, I guess there's a little bit of a paradox there because someone once asked me in the business world, if you're saying that you don't really own things and God owns everything, what makes you work so hard, right? It's sort of the perception right out there. Like you work hard because it's for you, right? Capitalism is based on personal greed and ambition or whatever you call it, self-interest. But I think you work harder if you're working for the creator of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, imagine if you have this position and you're like, hey, I work for I report directly to the president, to the CEO, to the president of the United States, to whoever, the highest level. I report directly to the creator of the universe. Like, I got a job. I got an important job. I got to work pretty hard. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm answering your question well, but I feel like that's sort of the journey. And also people talk about like how you raise your kids, right? How do you raise them with grit? Like you can't teach that from a textbook, right? How do you raise them to pursue excellence, have high standards? And one saying I have for the boys that I think you heard was, don't be great, just do great things. And I think the world is telling our kids, just be great, be somebody, be important, be famous. But doing great things, that's the rewarding in life, in this life.
That's really helpful. You're going to be episode either 49 or 50 on the Delay The Decay podcast. I made a 1-year commitment to do it every week and then just see if there's fruit. Are people enjoying it? Are people being changed by it? Do my guests enjoy being on it? And the avatar that I had in mind when I was thinking through who I was hoping was tuning in were ambitious leaders. And ambition it's a strange term that has a bunch of different meanings. It's both positive and negative. It's probably neutral. But ambitious leaders who are creators and builders, God has put something in them. Yet at the same time, they want to pursue that ambition, what God put in them, and live a prioritized life. God first, others second, stewarding their body and their mind, and then finances follow. It is, I want you to speak to those people, speak to me. We're stewards of what God has given us. And I'm going to answer my own question, and I want you just to respond to it actually, is if I'm not putting people first, whatever it is that I'm building, if I'm thinking through return first, rather than how it benefits others first, I'm getting it upside down. And I don't feel like God's going to bless it in the long term. And it's certainly not going to be long-term fulfilling if I'm just chasing the buck and I'm not benefiting other people in the way I do it. Thoughts on that ramble?
Yeah, no, I love that. The part of that, along the lines of that saying I have for my kids is, if you're the biggest thing in your life, it's going to be a sad life, because that's not how we're wired. We're not wired to be the biggest thing. We're wired to serve. I mean, you get married to serve somebody. You have kids to serve somebody. You have a job to serve somebody. Our business has a lot to do with a culture of hospitality. That's how we try to train our people, is to serve people. to metaphorically wash the feet of others who we think may not be that insignificant or important sometimes, or the world doesn't think so. But we're called to serve, and that's where transformation happens. That's where we have big impact, in this world. And I think I love the conversation of like that tension you're talking about, because it is very self-serving, right? I think us being in this, a lot of us are in this investment management space. We're investment managers, and we use real estate. Other people are investment managers with public markets, with stocks and bonds. Others are with private equity, but we're always thinking about returns in dollars, right? That's our currency. And again, if this world's passing, the dollars are really devalued down to zero. And we can't take that, even if you bury it in the coffin, right? It doesn't mean anything. And one concept I try to use to explain this is, let's convert it to sustainable currency. And the analogy I have is, remember in the 1970s, there were, I shouldn't say remember, not everyone on this call is going to remember that, but in the 1970s, there was like hyperinflation. Like Latin America and a lot of places, like 1,000% inflation, right? Like their pesos or whatever currency was just being devalued rapidly. They were literally putting bills in wheelbarrows, waiting in line to go to the window to convert to dollars, because dollars was like gold, right? It would be more stable. And while in line, it was just going down in value rapidly, and then they convert to the dollar. And then those bills, the bleeding stops, right? That's what I picture as like, we need to convert to kingdom currency. Where, of course, we're investment managers. We want to get returns. We want to perform for investors and all the stakeholders. And at the same time, like, we have a corporate tithing model that's a biblical design to follow God's design to spread the resources around. And so if you imagine like, okay, maybe we could take home another $500,000 from this deal, and those are part of the returns, and you're converting $50,000 of that to kingdom currency right away with the tithe, and you're saving little kids from dying of dirty water. You're getting kids into colleges as a first-generation college goer. You're, preventing trafficking, slave and sex trafficking, and like, this is converting to kingdom currency. The bleeding is going to stop, right? Like this, and I think our hearts are really pulled into wanting more. It's just it's the tension to want to be the creator rather than the creation. To like eat that forbidden fruit, go grab that forbidden fruit, right? And if we don't acknowledge this tension, then we're not going to fight it.
And giving really is the antidote. Giving really is the one thing we can do that keeps reminding us of kingdom living, isn't it?
Yeah, if something is put in my palm, my grip starts to tighten, and gotta let it go. Like, we gotta let go, and it's really hard to do. I think the world is very captivating. I think that's why, like, Jesus revealed to us the temptations from the enemy. The last one, like, bow down to me, and I can give you anything on this earth, all the splendors of this world. I mean, it really, when we talk about people pursuing more and more wealth, they're really pursuing things like status, right? And influence and power and control and a sense of security. And, I love how, like, I don't even know where his faith level is, but, the comedian Jim Carrey, I heard him once say, I hope everyone gets fame and fortune so that they can realize that's not it.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
And even he found that out, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think just letting go. That's why God designed it that way. I think God made a certain design, and if we follow it, we're going to feel abundance and fruit and prosperity, and because he has the right design. That's why I think people who are just pursuing secular wealth and accumulation, they're there's a void. Like they're empty and they're like, oh man, this isn't it. I was chasing the wrong thing. But if you follow God's design, there's so much fulfillment. Just even things like the first 10%, we don't touch it. That's God's design. And what is it doing? It's blessing other people. And that's just one example though. It's not like the secret sauce, kind of like the formula for a business, but I mean just following God's design is the secret sauce. Like that's, like the 1 Minute Manager book, Ken Blanchard, like it was like he wasn't even a believer, right? And then he realized, man, following the God's design, like Jesus being the manager, like there's things are working with this design. This is a great blueprint.
That's right. Yeah, and he eventually came to faith. Yeah, and a founder of a great college down in the Phoenix area, which was
Yeah,
pretty cool.
he's a pretty dynamic guy.
You had when I heard you speak, you had talked about this corporate tithing, and you talked about 10%, and you made a comment that is pretty bold. That he said, I wouldn't tell everybody to do this, but I think that giving starts at 10%. It's not like okay, I'm there, okay, I've done it, but it might be the starting point. Can you speak to that a little bit? Did I mishear you?
Yeah, I'm not a theologian or expert here, but I guess my theology is start with like what God designed it to be, and I think that's like the gleaning and the tithing. You don't touch that first 10%. It doesn't mean that you have $1 billion and you only tithe 10%, right? I mean, I think it's just 10% is kind of the starting point.
Are there other owners of Core besides yourself?
No, technically, I'm the owner of the single owner of the LLC.
Okay. And do your employees know that Core gives 10% off the top?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
That's kind of I don't know what you call it, a corporate mandate.
Yeah. Well, you don't do it for this reason, but how does that trickle down? How does that impact the culture and the individual lives of the employees?
I'm trying to think of it like a direct correlation, but I think most of it is really just the culture and the mission of the company. The Gallup study came out like 15 years ago, I think, or 10 years ago, that 87% of the population was unhappy with their work. 87%. I mean, that's a mind-boggling stat.
Crazy.
How could 87% of people like just hate what they do for a living, right? And when I first heard that, I was really shocked by that, and I thought, all these people coming into our office buildings, 87%. Wow, that's pretty bleak. So, I don't know if it's anecdotal, research-based, whatever, but I feel like living life, I've seen that people are craving and seeking purpose. I mean, think of the best-selling, I think it's the best-selling Christian book, was Rick Warren's Purpose-Driven Living. And that's the theme, that's the topic. Like, everyone's seeking purpose and meaning. And that existential exercise or crisis that might hit people, it's not always like, on your deathbed. It's like all of a sudden you go, I'm turning 40 or 50 or whatever, and all of a sudden I don't really know what I've done. I don't know what my life means. I don't know what the meaning of life is. So whenever that happens, right? And sometimes there's no real trigger. It just starts to come into people's minds. Other times there's a trigger. There's a divorce, there's a bankruptcy, there's a death of a child, there's, things happen and you go, what is the meaning? What is the purpose? And that's why I share these stories of like people finding purpose in their work. I mean, this is where we spend a lot of our time and energy and thought. So there's just so much potential with what you do every day and how you show up at work.
Mm-hmm. So we have the Great Commandment, we have the Great Commission. Great Commission to go and make disciples. Great Commandment is to love God, love other people. Those are like every kingdom citizen's macro purpose. How do you help, whether it be your sons or some young people in your business, how do you help them think through what their unique purpose is in this life?
Yeah, well, my 4 sons, from 22 down to 11, they're at different stages. But another saying I have is, I'm raising my sons to become my brothers. that I'm not the ultimate father. I want them to meet their creator. And it's their journey. Oftentimes, like being the steward of money is one thing, but really we're stewards and managers of everything. We don't own anything. We don't own our families. We don't own our kids. We're just managers. We're stewards. So as I try to steward that parental, role and my kids, I just want to try to point and model as much as I can. But then Romans 23 says I'm pretty messed up and I fall short of God's glory. So really, the key is I'll try to model as much as I can, good stuff, but the key is I got to point up, not at myself. I got to say, this is where you want to look, not me.
You talked about, Jack, of your business or the company being the church or being like a church with employees, with customers, with tenants, investors, vendors, all in the pews. What do you mean by that? And how does it change the way that you lead and care for people that God puts in your sphere of influence or in your church, if I may?
Yeah, I don't know if church is what I was looking for, but I think what I meant is like the Uber driver story where I was driving with an Uber driver who just told me that when he found out I was a Christian, he said he was as well, and I asked him what that looked like and what that means to him, and he has these meaningful conversations that really give hope to people in his car, and I thought, wow, I told him you're like a pastor and this is like your church and people are coming to your pews every 15 minutes. And I thought that's an awesome platform. And he just, looked like a different person. Like in his eyes, he looked like he was ordained and called. But he was doing what he always does. But, naming it to say, your work means something. It means something not just to you, but to others. Like what you do here, that's impacting the lives of other people. And so that's what gave him more purpose. And I think that's why his eyes lit up. And that's what I think most people are looking for is really purpose in their existential, question. What am I put here for?
That's good. I want to take it a little bit further because I was a pastor for 18 years, and the Greek for pastor is poimen, which means to shepherd. And I think there's a very similar purpose for a business leader or CEO to not just lead and hold accountable, hire, fire, but to shepherd, to care for the employees and the vendors. And that's a big part of your ethos, I believe.
Yeah, Dan, the culture, I guess I see it as like a corporate culture. Is we're trying to create a culture on our team, and then we want that culture to become the building culture. So, these days, if you just smile at people and you try to remember their names, and they go, "I didn't even know you knew me," and that really builds people up. That really affirms them. That honors them. And it sounds so simplistic, but it's a game changer. It's countercultural sometimes in our society, and that's what we're trying to do is create that culture of service, and then make that a building culture. So I've had building engineers tell me they never met an owner of a building. We buy that building, and all of a sudden we treat them like they're the most important business meeting, and we want to get to know them and honor them. And my answer to them is, we do that because we are asking you to honor the tenants, the clients. Why would we not honor you first? And also that God sees everybody equally important. And we don't often live that way, right? Like, what can that person do for me? If there's nothing, then why do I need to even know who they are, right? Rather than like, this is my boss's creation. This is my boss's kid. Like, how would I not honor this person? Don't tell me like they're just cleaning the building or whatever they're doing, but tell me they're God's child. This is This is the child of my king, my boss. Seeing people as like, this is my boss's kid. I need to honor them. It doesn't matter what they do for a living or what they mean or what they can do for me. But that's really corporate culture. I think when you say like, like, it's an interesting term. I'm glad you brought it up, like a business, like a church. But what is the church that we're trying to create, right? When I named it kingdom-oriented real estate, kingdom-oriented, like what I was thinking of the Lord's Prayer, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Then imagining what kingdom on earth could look like, could be like. I mean, that tells me, not just like tithing and stuff, but that tells me like I treat people a certain way that it should be like in the kingdom, right? Not like the world says. When the world says, well, what's this person? What do they have to offer? Just remember the names of the people who are going to, invest with you or partner with you or do something for you. But being like a church. And then I guess another dream I have for the church is to equip and send. Really to be like a base camp and equip and send us to go out there Monday through Friday and have a positive impact in the world. For us, it's the marketplace. Like, how are we showing up in the marketplace? How are we showing up in the public square? Are we different? Like, if we're calling ourselves kingdom-oriented real estate and we buy a building, does it feel different? Do the people feel like it's a different place? It feels different. It feels good. And it's like, it's supposed to be pointing to something. And so that's what I see as this whole chain of like the base camp and equipping and sending us out. Whether you're the Uber driver, whether you're the building owner, whatever you're doing, whether you're the dentist, are we being sent out to bless the world around us?
Yeah. So what would you have a brother that's a pastor, pastors. I was a pastor. What would you say to pastors out there to recognize and encourage entrepreneurs, business owners to impact the kingdom? How would you, because I feel like pastor, like for me, when I was a pastor, even though I was an entrepreneur before that, I kind of lost sight of the ministry that business leaders and owners had Monday through Saturday when they're not sitting in the pew on Sunday. And I feel like there's a miss there. Like, if you were just speaking to a group of pastors right now, how would you encourage them to empower people in the pews to go out on Monday?
Yeah, it's tough on pastors. I mean, you know better than me. People want things, right? They're demanding things like, well, what about this? And why can't the church do this and that? But I do feel like a pillar of a church should be this equipping and sending. I think I started a men's ministry in one of the churches, and there's MOPS, and there's, Celebrate Recovery, and Financial Peace University. I mean, a lot of things, right? We need alpha courses, and they're all good. I feel like a major role, though, is to equip and send. So to answer your question, I would love to see pastors embrace that role. Like, people today, I feel like, well, I might bring someone to church, and then I'll just line them up in front of the pastor. And maybe the pastor would just take this line of people and just baptize them on the spot or something, right? But really, that's not the structure. The structure is we're sent out. We're equipped and sent. And the church is a base camp.
Yeah, the pastors are to equip the saints for the work of ministry. And it's not just planting churches, even though that's important. It's not just sending missionaries overseas. That's important. But everybody is going somewhere on Monday to be sent there. That's really what you're talking about, isn't it?
Yeah. And I'm not like I'm not criticizing like this church structure or anything. It's just sometimes people have to step up too, and they're part of the church. They're not. We have this like event-based model right now. Like, was it a good show? I found a better show at another church, or it's very like event-based, and sometimes personality eccentric. But when I went to a pretty large church, and I said, "Where's the men's ministry? Like, what do you do for men's ministry?" They said, "Well, we don't have one." And I said, I had all these ideas, and they said, "Hey, you should start it." And I was like, "Okay, that makes sense, I guess. If there isn't one, someone's got to do it." So that would be great for marketplace people in the congregation to say, can we start to gather and do what Dan Anderson was doing at Kingdom Way, and what you're doing with this, community on the podcast? Like, that could be done at these churches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jack, my wife, Nancy, and me, we are looking for a church for the first time in 30 years. Because we were part of a church, we were sent out to plant a church, and then I was a pastor there for almost 20 years. And it's hard to find a church, and there's plenty of churches I'm finding that preach the Bible, that sing God-exalting songs. They've got all the programs, but what I've been looking for is a church that really values ministry in the workplace. They really bless us and send us as missionaries, give me grace on that term, in the workplace. And one of the churches we're considering, it's really weird to even talk about, it's like we're shopping. We're shopping. It's hard, it's weird. But I looked at their bookshelf. So many good books. Not one on equipping the business leader, the entrepreneur, the business owner to encourage them or equip them to live out their faith on Monday morning. And I think that's a miss.
I love that. I love that you're looking for that. I think a lot of people are.
So I want to go back to the way we treat people. That every human being's made in God's image. Everybody is equal and made in the image of God. And my wiring, like my fleshly wiring, is that I'm more of a transactional leader. I've had to work really hard over the years to be relational. What I mean by transactional is that that I'm going to show conditional love and support and service based on what I can get back. Whether that be an employee, whether that be somebody that is sitting in the pew, I'm just being honest, that is making more money than other people in the pew, that I can, I know this about myself. I was a financial consultant for 20 years, and I'm going like, why am I treating this person different than I'm treating this person? And it's, I think if we're all honest, it's a fight to not see our investors, our employees, people that can benefit us as just a cog in the wheel, to really see them as having infinite value.
Yeah. I think that's how we show up differently, right? Like, if we're following the words in red, if we're trying to be a follower of Christ instead of a religious Christian, then we have to look like Jesus, right? It should be natural to start resembling him. And so if you think about how, not just what Jesus said, but what he did. I mean, who did he hang out with? He was homeless, right? I don't know. You don't hear about a home, a house. You don't hear about fancy cars or status, even symbol, influence, like secular titles and all that. And he really valued the people without worldly status. Yeah. So it's like going back to God's design again, or the words in red, or however you put it. I think I would love to resemble Jesus more. Even though I try in some ways, but I also fail in some ways, and that would be the goal. That would be the aspirational goal, is to look more like Jesus.
The verse that Delay the Decay is based on is 2 Corinthians chapter 4, that even though the outer human is decaying, we don't put our hope in not in stopping the decay. The inner human is being renewed day by day. And what I believe that means is that our hope is increasing in Jesus conforming us into his image. And that gives me great hope, especially in my most boneheaded days. Jack, you've encouraged people to ask the question, what is out of order in my life? If I'm not mistaken, that's a question you asked the Kingdom Way audience. What is out of order in your life? How do you personally keep God, family, health, work, generosity in their proper order?
Yeah, well, life is about like kind of the pendulum swinging and trying to balance the scales, right? And more weight goes on one side than the other. It's never perfectly balanced, but I think it's a tension for a lot of people in the marketplace. And the more responsibility you have, it seems like it's a harder thing to balance. I don't know. It's tough because I could talk about the work ethic and striving and working hard for something and going after something and grit. These are positive things. These are what help you excel in whatever you're doing. But then at the same time, like, are you idolizing these things too? Is it becoming your idol? And are you failing as a father because you're striving in another area? Like, those kind of things. So, yeah, I don't have really good prescriptive solutions for those things, but it's a
Yeah.
struggle for a lot of us.
Yeah. Has there been a season in your life where you look back and you go, wow, yeah, I was out of balance. I wasn't living the prioritized life that I was striving to live?
Yeah, sure. There's probably different stages and good days, bad days, but
Hmm.
I think there's also, like, for a lot of your listeners who are building businesses and trying to build something, career or whatever, there are times where, sure, there are seasons, right? There are seasons where you're going to be a little off and working different hours. When I was working in Alaska as a 20-year-old trying to make money and go back and pay for school and living expenses, I was on my own doing this. So I worked 120 hours a week in Alaska, and then now I work 60 hours, and I'm thinking it's only half, right? But I'm gonna turn 60 soon, and it's like. I don't really want 60-hour work weeks right now, but there's a season like a 30 that was fine. And then, my kids have needs that require, less hours in the office as well. But then I talk about people wanting remote work and people wanting to work like such a short week and 3 days a week, and they're just starting their careers. And so yeah, it's not really a universal answer necessarily for everybody, but yeah, I think we're struggling with this together, where we have to try to. I think the key really is to try to focus on who you're working for. Back to like who's the boss.
Hmm. Yeah. So you're approaching 60, just a young man.
Yeah, you said we're not
Wh-
putting our hope in, to stopping the decay, but I don't know. I would put a little hope in it if there was some way to delay the decay, slow it down a little bit.
That's I believe we can, but the results are up to God, right? Yeah, right. We steward what God's given us, and one of the ways we steward is by being cognizant of what we put in our mouth, by moving, by stewarding our relationships, right?
Actually, I've done a bad job physically. Yeah, I was really physical, doing a lot of physical labor, playing sports. And then after 30, I've been in my chair and I've been working late nights and different time zones with different people, stakeholders. And next thing you know, like, I've got my blood pressure issues and um, it's, my health is definitely compromised for sure.
How are you feeling about that?
Yeah, it's an area that I want to be a better steward in, the temple of God.
Hmm.
It's all of it, but it's also like accountability to your kids, right? Like,
Hmm.
why would you not take care of your body? and your mind and your soul mostly.
Yeah. Jesus says, I came to give you life in life to the full. And I know a lot of Christians that don't seem to be experiencing life to the full. And I think it has a lot to do with their stewardship mindset, where they're not stewarding the domains that God's given them to steward. And I'm just a few years ahead of you. We won't talk about that age gap, but I've got 10 grandkids right now, and I mean, God can take me home tomorrow. He's got that prerogative. I can eat as healthy as I want. I can exercise 3 times a day, and in His providence, He may take me home tomorrow. But I'm going to do everything I can to serve others and enjoy the good gifts of a relationship as long as I can. Does that seem selfish?
I think we're wired that way to flourish, right? And a lot of people are not flourishing. There's really a lot of anxiety, depression. People are struggling, and that's why I just like I need it. I want to bring hope to people's lives if I can. Maybe I can't, but isn't that a great endeavor to try to bring hope into other people's lives somehow?
Very much so. I've got just a couple of big rocks I want to ask you before we sign off. One of them is this question. You're good at asking questions that make people think. I love it. Whose shortlist are you on? And I'll let you give the context. I think you were describing the custodian in your office, and then also the Uber driver. And then you asked whose shortlist are you on? Give me some context there and why that's an important question to ask.
Yeah, when people think it's all or none, like I'm not Billy Graham, I'm not out there, preaching to thousands. I'm having a hard time not giving dirty looks to the person next to me, right? But I think it's one person at a time, and reaching one person at a time. And the short list, the whole notion of that is we're all in relationship with people. And so whose short list are we on where they hit that crisis, like I was talking about earlier? Could be the bankruptcy or the deathbed, but who are they trying to call for hope and answers? And maybe they thought what you were sharing about your faith was kind of crazy and kind of silly. But maybe there's a point in their life where they say, I want to know. And Joe or Sarah, whoever is on my short list for that question. And so I think that's a great goal for me, is to try to get on people's short lists. And that is the example. Some people I've had long conversations about where my hope lies, and they don't receive it at the time. Well, maybe, but later, I've had people come back and ask me again, like, let's have this conversation again.
Yeah. So it's so compelling, because I think a lot of us think about who's on our short list. Like if we had a crisis, who would we go to? And that's important. But the more sacrificial, selfless, servant-hearted question is, whose short list am I on? Do people see me as available? Do they see me as approachable? Do they see me as someone who is going to love them and see them and hear them and not judge them?
Yeah. And by the way, that story about the janitor Gus, who came to my office one night to tell me he was retiring, it wasn't that I was on his short list, but that opportunity, to, when he told me he was retiring, and all of a sudden the spiritual vibe that I was getting to do something, and I didn't know why, but I ended up praying over him, and then he said he's going back to God, and then I gave him a hug when he left my office, and he thought this was really weird. In 13 years I've never done any of this. Why is Jack acting like this? but I felt something. It was really strong. It was a really strong spiritual interference that I had to reach him. And then, that was Friday night. And then Monday morning, his family called me and said he was killed in a car accident. So I knew when I was hugging him and praying over him, there was a spiritual voice telling me something's about to happen and I need to do something for this person. I didn't know at the time what that meant, but when I got the call on Monday, it all made sense. I was like, oh, no wonder, that's what it was.
Yeah. I feel like it's really hard for high achievers, busy people, those that have a lot of responsibility to be available. I mean, in the moment, especially. I mean, it was an evening. I'm sure you were in the middle of something. You were on your way to somewhere, yet you were compelled to stop.
Yeah,
And
right.
engage.
And, it wasn't very noble. Like, I wasn't like, oh, I need to go hang out and talk to you. I mean, I missed dinner already with my family, and it was Friday, the weekend already started. And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess I can talk for a little bit, a little reluctant, I have to admit. But it was so perfect that I was used, and I was grateful that I was able to be used like that.
Hmm. Yeah. Last question. As far as I know, God has a way of using trials. We talked about that to shape us. I think sometimes it's the sharpest tool in his tool belt. You talked about the vine and the branches. My wife is a lifetime gardener. I've been gardening the last 2 years, much to her chagrin, because it's her garden and I think I know everything about gardening and I really know nothing. But I was pruning tomatoes just yesterday. I was in there pruning back branches that were withered. And the reason that I was doing that, I read, and it just makes sense from a biblical perspective as well, is that sometimes we need to prune off the branches in our life that are not producing fruit in order that greater fruit might grow. And I don't know where that illustration breaks down, but it was my wife said, be careful pruning that. Like, don't hurt the plant. And pruning might hurt in the time, but the Lord's pruning is never meant to destroy us. It's never meant to disable us. It's made to increase the fruit that we produce. So what I want to ask you, Jack, is you've been a high caliber leader, CEO, investor for a lot of years, dad of 4 boys, married for 30 some years. How has God used trials in your life to sharpen you, to help you bear more fruit?
Yeah, remember, Michael Jordan said, I hate losing more than I love winning, but I respect losing because it teaches you how to win, right? It's like there's a progression in trials. And when I memorized James chapter 1, it was because I was struggling. And, basically James 1 says, consider it all joy whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith will develop perseverance. And perseverance must finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So starting with have joy when you have trials, then at the end the result is you will not lack anything. Like provision comes from the trials, which is a little paradoxical, right? But like, why would I want to have trials? That means there's depravity with trials, but it's actually there's provision with trials. And that's what's so powerful with God's design is if you clip the wings of the monarch butterfly, if you're keeping it from struggling and helping it get out of its cocoon, then the fluids don't go into the wings and you kill the butterfly. It's not able to fly. So sometimes you take away the trials, you're actually destroying something, your life, the process. You're kind of destroying the journey, the whole, the way God made it. And yeah, those times that were tough, I think, whether it was emotional or physical, and that's what formed me, right? And people think it's grit. Yeah, it develops grit, sure, but it also develops dependence, where you realize I'm not the source. Yeah, why do I think I'm such a big deal? Why do I think I can just work my way out of it? Why do I think I can just fix problems? Like, stop being the source. Like the whole, the story of Philip saying, how are we going to feed 10,000 people with 2 fish and 5 loaves? And Jesus is like, stop looking at your basket of insufficiency. Look up at me. Look up and you'll see. Stop trying to be the source. And I think that's what trials do. Trials make us who we are.
Yeah, wow. And that's that kingdom abundance that you're talking about, that God owns everything, and he gives good gifts. And sometimes those gifts come in the form of trials, but it's always in his kindness that he gives them to us.
Yeah. And we should embrace the trials and teach our kids to embrace it. And it's really hard for us to see our kids struggle. Like parents want to take that away, and it's like, like even just giving them anything they want to eat, going out to great restaurants, great vacations, buying them whatever they want, like we're destroying them.
Jack, I want to give you the last word, and I want you to just speak to 2 different people. One of them is a man or a woman who is at the tip of a spear. They're building something significant in the world's eyes. They're Christians. It's somebody who has put their faith and trust in Jesus. Yet they're anxious. They're lacking joy, and they're just tired of living this way. How would you encourage them?
Yeah, sometimes I think there's a season for a reason. I guess the best way that I could encourage someone like that is to get out of ourselves and attach back to the vine. I think a lot of that is coming from us being the source. And I think Jesus modeled that for us when the enemy says, okay, you fasted for 40 days, now you must be starving, turn the stone into bread because you know you can do it. And he modeled that, of course his response is man cannot live on bread alone, but he modeled that he always goes back and attaches to the Father, to the Creator. And he'll go up to the mountains and pray. He'll go out in solitude. He always comes back. But he goes out in solitude and he connects back to the Father. And I'm kind of speaking to myself here, because that's when you feel some hopelessness, it's almost always in my life, I'm not attached. I've detached. I need to attach back to the Father. I need to get it back to the mountains, the holy ground.
Thanks for that. And the second person is the high achiever, leader, CEO, has accomplished a ton of success, but there is no kingdom living. There's no relationship with the Father through Jesus. How would you speak to that person?
Meaning a believer who's kind of... not a believer. Okay.
Yeah.
One story I have is, I shared with you at that meeting, was there was a hotel GM who wanted to have dinner with me because our company had bought that $100 million building next door to him. And he's like, how do you do that? And so he wanted to have dinner with me, and I was reluctant because it was a busy trip. But I had dinner with him, I met him, and it was at the hotel, and he wanted to talk business, and then he asked about us, and when he found out about the faith culture and everything, and then I started talking more about that, and he got really quiet, and he said, God sent you to me. I said, why? And he said, because I'm an atheist, and I walked away from God, and I just was determined to be an atheist. I was determined never to tell my kids that God exists. I didn't want them to be lied to. And he said, but I kind of just realized spiritually that God's coming for me, and this conversation is it. And I didn't go through some apologetics or like a book or some theological discussion. I was just talking about my Father, my identity, and not in a Bible thumping way, but just that's just who I am. It's like talking about my kids and my wife. And when I met his wife, who runs the Starbucks at that hotel, 2 days later when I was checking out, she said, our family changed since that night. You guys had that conversation. He pulled out the Bibles and he started telling our kids about God, and our family just changed. And we have hope, that's, I don't know if that's a good way to answer what you just asked me, but like bringing hope is really just the testimony, right? Of the testimony doesn't belong to us; it belongs to the kingdom, and we need to share it, and we need to use it, and just explain to people what we see. If we see an oasis in the desert, and the guy's about to die of dehydration in 3 hours, and the guy says, "Oh yeah, I don't. You might have found an oasis, but I'm gonna go look for another one."
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
you say, "Well, let me see if I can get him to this oasis anyway."
Yeah. So good. You said it earlier too. It's not about religion. It's not just about telling somebody to follow this set of rules. It's about a relationship. It's about being connected to the vine. And so I just want to double down on that. That if you are listening, I'm so glad you're listening, and you can accumulate all the world's goods and still lack joy and hope. And the only way you're going to find that ultimate joy and hope is to surrender to the God who's pursuing you, who wants a relationship with you, right? So, Jack, thank you very much. We've talked a lot about kingdom living. That's kind of a nutshell. And wow, what a surprise! Core kingdom oriented real estate should be kingdom oriented, Jack. So, thank you so much. You've been such an encouragement to me, an encouragement to the audience to just live attached to the vine. Don't live apart from the vine. If people want to follow you, are you on LinkedIn, Instagram? Is there anywhere that people can just follow your journey a little bit?
Yeah, I guess I'm on both. Yeah, I'm not great at posting a lot, but sure.
Okay, great. And tell me, do you have any books coming up, or I mean, are you getting that story out there, or are you just content being Jack Kim, manager of $200 million, running core investments, father of 4, and husband to 1?
I guess if people want to talk, I talk. But
I know you do.
but yeah,
Yeah.
if it does help at some point to put something down on paper, I should do that too, I guess.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for taking your valuable time. Delay the Decay audience, great to be with you. I hope you've been encouraged. I hope you've been inspired. Remember that this journey called life is about direction, not perfection. And it's the direction of kingdom living. It's the direction of being abiding in the vine. So just stay on that journey. To put perfection aside. Be excellent. Strive for excellence. But know that there's a God who's going to pick you up. He's going to forgive you. He's going to hear you. He's going to lead you every step of the way. So builders, creators, let's just go for it for the glory of God and for the good of our fellow human beings out there. All right. Until
Amen.
next time, we'll see you on the other side.